Thank you, Matt. There are reports
I didn't
that...
mean to call on you if you didn't have your hand up.
Oh, no, I
going
did.
Going along the front row.
There are reports that the CIA director and Brett McGurk are heading back to the region in furtherance of potential hostage and ceasefire talks. Do you expect that the Secretary will engage in in-person diplomacy in the region as well?
So the Secretary has been engaged, as I discussed in my opening comments and as I discussed yesterday, in a number of phone conversations with partners in the region over the past now 4 days since Friday's announcement. And he will be traveling to Europe, leaving tonight to join the president for his trip to Normandy and then a bilateral visit with France. And I don't have any further travel to announce beyond that.
Okay. And I know you said that there has been no response received as yet from Hamas. Is it known from either Egyptian or Qatari interlocutors whether the proposal has actually reached Yahya Sinwar for his evaluation, even if a response hasn't come back?
I don't know an answer to that question.
Okay, have we?
I don't believe we know.
Okay. On aid, you mentioned yesterday that there were constructive discussions that took place in Cairo. Obviously, a number of international aid groups have been raising alarms that the situation is dire and getting worse by the day. So where do efforts to reopen Rafah stand, and what is the broader aid picture in terms of what the U.S. is facilitating on a daily basis?
So with respect to the opening of Rafah, there were conversations over the weekend in Cairo between the United States, Israel, and the government of Egypt that focused on how to get Rafah open. We found them to be constructive discussions. There were detailed proposals that were put forth by the various parties. And then, as often happens in these sorts of negotiations, the negotiators had to go back to their countries, consult with their capitals, and continue discussions. So there are a number of proposals that are on the table that need to be fleshed out. There are different ways you could go about reopening Rafah that we are working through. Separate from that, though it's of course related, the question of humanitarian assistance. We have continued to work to get humanitarian assistance back flowing through Kerem Shalom after the decision about 10, 11 days or so ago made by Egypt to allow trucks to move through Kerem Shalom. Yesterday, I think it was somewhere around 250 trucks that went in through Kerem Shalom. I'm probably off by a dozen or so because I'm doing this from memory. Other trucks that went in through one of the crossings in the north. The majority of those were humanitarian assistance trucks, so trucks by the UN and partner agencies, not commercial trucks. Generally, over the past few days, we've continued to see a mix of commercial trucks and humanitarian assistance. We want to see both. We think it's important that there be both, and we're looking to maximize as many as possible coming through all of the various crossings. Third thing I'll say, maybe I've lost count, is that the Pentagon continues to work to try to reestablish the maritime option, get that pier up and running so we can flow assistance through there. But then the big question overhanging all of this is the status of the ceasefire proposal, which would alleviate all of these various logistical problems that make it so hard to move humanitarian assistance in through a conflict, would make all of those not 100% go away, but would make them, in many cases, evaporate or be at least significantly lessened. So the push for a ceasefire deal is inherently related to the push to try to dramatically increase the level of humanitarian assistance that makes it to the people of Gaza.
One more, just to tag on to Humayra's question about President Biden's remarks in this recent interview. Is the Secretary of the view that Prime Minister Netanyahu may be prolonging the conflict in an effort to stay in office?
I don't think that's exactly what the president said. I think he said that some people could conclude that. Look, the president's comments speak for themselves. I'm not going to add anything to that. But I will just say we have been engaged with the Prime Minister on this question, and the Prime Minister has put forward a proposal on behalf of the Israeli government that would lead to a ceasefire and ultimately could lead to the end of the war, pending other negotiations, and we're trying to get that ceasefire over.
The President said there's every reason for people to draw that conclusion without commenting permanently.
Right.
So just one follow-up. I mean, so the proposal is on the table. As a contingency, have you had any indication that the Israelis are also planning for a day-after scenario, as you have urged them to do?
We've seen the defense minister come out and make public statements about possible day-after scenarios. You've seen, obviously, statements from Minister Gantz, member of the War Cabinet, about the need to do day-after planning. We have still not seen the kind of rigorous planning for the end of the conflict that we think is essential. And as you've heard us say, this isn't just about the end of the conflict, because in our view, without a plan for the day after, there won't be a day after. Without a plan for post-conflict governance and some kind of political transition, you're not going to have an end to the conflict. You're just going to have a continued insurgency and Israel being bogged down fighting against Hamas or Hamas's successors for years and years to come.
I have another on Ukraine.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank